In this lesson, we are going to learn one of my favorite techniques to weave bases out of. For many years, this was my go-to method for round bases and oval bases before I learned the French rending technique. And this is essentially plain rending. It's just going over one and behind one stick with with a single rod. But since the natural stick number for bases is an even number, we have to work with two separate weavers in order to get an alternation. So this in Hebrew we like to call it a following weave, since one weaver is always following the other. I think it can also be called a two-rod rend. To me, this technique is much better than pairing. It's much finer, it's much tighter, it progresses more quickly. It could be a little more hard to control at first, but really once you get the hang of the working method, it's as easy, if not easier. To me, it's actually easier than pairing. And as you can see, I locked it at the end with a single round of pairing, since this hold doesn't really hold itself. This weave doesn't really hold itself in position, so it has to be locked like this. Let's begin. So I'm starting to reverse pair here. I will always do those first rounds and the separation of the sticks in reverse pairing. I'm going to make another round here. All right. Finished 2 rounds, and now we're going to start separating. But maybe we can use some water here to maximize flexibility. Pre-kinking the sticks, and we can begin. To the front and back to the back. To the front and back to the back. To the front. Before we go back, let's use our bodkin here to fasten or tighten the weave. Beautiful. Going back to the back. Once again, reverse pairing. Our default state is in the back. Both weavers are in the back. To the front and to the back. To the front and to the back. Many times I will start rending after just the first round of separating. In this case, my weavers are a little thick for these small spaces, so I prefer to make several more rows of pairing, reverse pairing in this case, before I switch over to Randing. So I made a few rounds of reverse pairing, and now I'm going to start rending with 2 weavers. You can call it a 2-rod rend, and the reason why we need 2 weavers is because the number of sticks is even. So if we work with just 1 weaver, there's not going to be an alternation, and it's going to go over itself. So now it doesn't really matter where I begin. As I said earlier, usually I would do just 1 row of reverse pairing just to separate the sticks, and right after that, with the same weavers, I will switch to rending, in the beginning with very thin weavers, and then slowly as I progress I will switch to thicker weavers. But this time I chose to do it like this because my weavers are thicker here. So I'm just working with 1 for now, and I really like this method for bases because it makes for a very fine base, and it's really quick. But actually these weavers here are not very good, and they're breaking. It's really annoying. Alright, now before I complete a full round, if I should go on, now there will be no alternation. I will go over the last round. So I stop here and I add in another weaver before the first, and I start weaving, and this weaver is doing the alternation. These weavers are not very good, they're breaking. Hopefully I will manage to prevent that. If it doesn't work, I will switch back to the white material. Alright, now I finished a round. Now I can't pass the other weaver. I cannot pass this other weaver, so now this weaver waits and this weaver works. At all times you have one weaver following the other, which is why in Hebrew we like to call it following weave. This is essentially rending with 2 weavers, a 2-rod rend. I'm being extra careful here not to break the material. As the spaces grow larger, it will be easier to avoid breaks, but for now it's still quite difficult. I'm just going to stop for a minute and use my bodkin to fasten here. Now I wait with this one and continue with the other one. for this I've chosen weavers that are relatively short and more or less even in thickness from tip to butt, and this will make for a very neat and very fine weave. Now I can wait here and work with the other one, or I can join now. I prefer to wait. Just going before and after. Now to really make the work tight in the first rounds where the spaces are still quite small, I would have to, not prefer, I would have to, I wouldn't just do this, go over and then fasten and then weave it into place. I would go backwards like this, hold it in the back, put my finger here and come back to the front, to the back and to the front. Now I have to join. This butt end is thicker than this butt end, but this tip end is more close in thickness to this butt end, so I'm just going to insert it a little bit more to the inside, and it's roughly the same thickness here, so I actually chose to join tip to butt here, but it broke, so let's do it again. Oh no, this is a terrible weaver. Let's get rid of it. Now they're not breaking as much because the spaces are gradually becoming bigger. This one waits. Now I'm not going to use this weaver all the way to its tip because it becomes very flimsy, so I'm just going to join here. Just going to join tip here. Once again, I'm not going to use this very flimsy tip. I'm going to insert it a little bit until it has some meat on it, and this will be the starting point. Alright, now let's join here. I could go another move or two, but I already have a join here, so I'm going to join here before that. These weavers are fairly short and even in thickness, so sometimes I will join butt to tip, or tip to butt. Doesn't really matter. I'm working pretty intuitively in this case. I have to clean the bottom side here. As I said, these are some very short weavers, so a lot of joins, but it's okay because these joins are at the bottom side, they're unseen, and the upper side is 100% join free. Now we can continue, and those very flimsy tip ends I'm not going to use. I'm going to try to replace, to join before I get to them. So now this one has to wait, and once again I join before I get to the very, very flimsy tip. And the more the base grows here, the faster the work becomes. Now it's very, very easy to go in between the stakes. As you can see, I have to replace here. This base progresses incredibly quickly. It's a very, very fast technique for bases, very fine, as I probably said 10 times by now, but I cannot stress this enough. This is my technique of choice for bases. Alright, and I'm going to have to stop here because I don't have enough sticks left for the final row, so I'm just going to finish this like this. Fine. Perfect. Now let's just trim the ends a little bit, and then we're going to close and to border that weave with pairing, because this weave doesn't hold itself in place. We have to border it with pairing. Alright, now we can do one of two things. We can either just use pairing to border that and to hold everything in place, because this, as I said, this jumps, this doesn't hold itself in place, or we can use waling to actually create a foot rim right now at the base. So whenever I'm weaving a base in Randing or French Randing, I will always border it either with pairing, simply to lock it, or with waling to create a foot rim. So I'm going to use four actually, 4 rods. I'm looking for the thicker ones here to really get a nice lock for this base. So I've chosen 4 thick rods, or actually 5 for some reason, and I'm going to begin with butts. Doesn't really matter where. Begin here, 1 and 2, and I'm just doing a regular pairing now. Maybe I'll stick some more of that towards the other side. That will make the finishing easier. And it's just regular pairing, but as I do it, I really try to fasten the work and lock the work with it. Now when I get to the other side, I will join butts to tips and continue with 2 new rods. So let's just count for a minute. This is the first one. Alright, so I actually have to replace here this behind this one is the first one. So this joins the other one, the other weaver, like this in the back, and we continue with the new one, leaving the old one there. Now the next one, I hope you can see what I'm doing here, like this, and continue with the new one. Now if you want to know exactly where to join, I like to refer to this one as the first stake. I went behind this one first. So this would be the first, and since this is a 16 stick base, we are dividing it into two groups of 8. So this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the next group of 8 starts here. So the first replacement, the first join, is behind this stake right here. That's what I've done here. And you only have to think about the first one, no matter what you do. If you do a pairing or 3-rod or 5-rod wale, I only have to think about the first one, and the rest simply come after that. So now we just continue to lock this weave, and now when we get to the end here, this first one joins the first butt end like this. They lay side by side, and then this last one really locks things in place. I like to kind of soften it a little bit to prevent it from breaking, and it joins the other butt end like this. Have to thread it through. Beautiful. Nice. Now this should hold itself in place. And the reason we've made this join at exactly the half point is in order to have a more even thickness of rod throughout the whole round. If I would just begin in one place and go all the way to the other place, the weave here, in one side that is, the weave here would be much thicker than when I finish the round. So we have to do it like this. Now let's just trim. And this is a rendered base as I like to make it. I almost always use this method because it's very fine looking, it's very quick, it's very easy. Yeah, that's it.